Joining us now is former Israeli ambassador to the United States, Michael Oren. He is live from Israel. Mr. Ambassador, thanks for being with us this morning. What more can you tell us from what you've gathered over these last 12 hours or so about the planning of these attacks and how they were carried out?
Well, Willie, good morning. Good morning from Israel. I'm still in my safe room. We all have bomb shelters in our homes, but the Israeli military has announced that we can leave these homes. If you look out my window here, you can see people in the street, which means one thing and one thing only, that the threat of being pummeled by thousands of long-range Iranian ballistic missiles, each carrying warheads of 2,000 pounds of TNT, has disappeared. And it means that somewhere along the line, in addition to taking out the four top military leaders in Iran, nuclear scientists, the Natanz, the nuclear facility, and rocket launchers, somehow Israel has completely neutralized the threat against Iran. That doesn't mean that rockets can't come later on, but it's an extraordinary moment, and one that can prove utterly transformative for the entire Middle East.
So, Ambassador, let's talk about the aims of this operation, the attack overnight. We know there was an attack near nuclear facilities, a nuclear enrichment facility primarily, and also just taking out the leadership of the Iranian military, the heads of the IRGC, a couple of nuclear scientists as well. What is the objective of this attack?
I think the primary objective is to remove the immediate and existential threat of a nuclear-armed Iran. And Israel had received information, I think that the United States had the same information, that Iran had now violated all of its commitments under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. It was enriching uranium at 60% with enough nuclear fissile material to make 9 nuclear weapons, and that the warhead development had advanced to a point where it could actually be weaponized and placed upon a ballistic missile. And Iran has an entire fleet of ballistic missiles that are capable of carrying nuclear warheads. So that was a total game changer, an existential threat to the state of Israel. There were also reports that Iran was poised to mount multiple attacks along Israel's borders, even the Egyptian and Jordanian border. So for the Israeli government, I think this was not a very difficult choice, but clearly an operation like this was years in the planning, and was not made overnight. And it's just beginning. What I think is going to happen, really, I think it's indicated by that last tweet posted by the president, is that the Iranians are going to be quietly crying uncle to the United States, telling the United States, haul off the Israelis, and we're willing to go back to the negotiating table and talk about dismantling nuclear facilities that are already dismantled. And I wouldn't be surprised if President Trump is going to be calling on Israel to start winding this down in the next maybe hours, days at most.
Mr. Ambassador, good morning. In the days before the strike, some U.S. intelligence officials were skeptical of the claim that Iran was ready to strike at Israel and other partners in the region. And you're certainly right. President Trump in his post just now, and we've heard from him for weeks now, including in his phone call with Prime Minister Netanyahu on Monday, said he really wanted a diplomatic solution here. He still believed in the possibility of getting to the table and that talks would get a deal done. In fact, he's still hoping that things will happen this weekend. We'll see whether they go on as scheduled. So my question to you is, why do you think Prime Minister Netanyahu, even if it wasn't outright defiance of President Trump, he clearly went his own way here and did not take the path the White House hoped he would?
He took the path of previous Israeli prime ministers. Of Menachem Begin in 1981, who defied the will of Ronald Reagan and took out the Iraqi nuclear reactor. He went in the path of Ehud Olmert in 2007, who went against the will of George Bush Jr. and took out the Syrian nuclear reactor. So there's plenty of precedents for this. And now we're going to see whether Bibi will go in the path of Levi Eshkol, the prime minister during the 1967 war, and Golda Meir, the prime minister during the 1973 Yom Kippur War, both of whom resisted American pressures to end the war prematurely until Israel had achieved its military goals. And I think that's going to be the major story in the next couple of days, to see whether Israel can continue this action against Iran. Israel right now is striking Iran pretty much at will. There have been no reports of Israeli losses to date, and Israel's usually pretty good about reporting those losses early if they do occur. The goal of this, we're going to go back to Willie's question, what is the goal of this? Okay, remove the immediate existential military threat to the state of Israel, but there may be a longer-term goal. I personally don't see how the regime in Iran survives this. They have proven to be not just a paper tiger, but a tissue tiger. And they have plenty of opposition within the country. It's a despised regime by a large part of the Iranian population. And I think we can maybe see a big change in Iran and a change for the entire Middle East, possibly peace between Israel and Syria, Israel and Lebanon, Israel and Saudi Arabia, certainly, a resolution to the horrible situation in Gaza, and who knows, maybe even peace between Israel and Iran.
Ambassador, you seem to be suggesting that actually some sort of regime change in Iran you think could be possible out of this. As you know, the Americans were due to start more talks with the Iranians this weekend. That now looks, almost impossible. Is the end of the diplomatic talks then a desirable outcome as well? Is that a desirable consequence of these strikes? Is that something that the Israeli government would hope would come from these strikes too, to quash all chances of diplomatic negotiations?
Well, no, I don't think so. I think it's an excellent question. I think short of regime change, what Israel wants is to see the dismantlement of the Iranian nuclear program and the verifiable dismantlement of that program. That has been Israel's goal from the get-go. I've been involved in this issue for 20 years. That was always Israel's goal, not just capping the enrichment. And we know that with advanced centrifuges, the capping means nothing because Iran can enrich to 60% and mass enough for 9 bombs within a matter of months, even if they're capped. So it has to be dismantled. And if Iran comes back now and says, uncle to the United States, haul off the Israelis, we're willing to go back to the table and talk about dismantling, I think Israel would view that sufficiently. I think in any case, Israel would want to continue this military action until Iran is completely neutralized as a threat, not just to us, but to many of our neighbors in the Middle East.
So, Ambassador, as you know, Iran has promised massive retaliation. Unclear if it can pull that off at this point, given the military decapitation that just happened, but they will reconstitute themselves. If they do, what would you expect that to look like? Through client states, through the terrorist organizations they support, what would that look like?
It could look like, yes, it could be a terrorist operation, not just against Israel, but against Jewish and Israeli targets abroad. And I would be very cautious. I'm sure there are high alerts at Israeli embassies, Jewish institutions abroad, even synagogues in the United States. Don't rule that out. High level of alert. But it's interesting, and I just want to reiterate the fact that we've been let out by the home command here of our bomb shelters is an extraordinary move. At 2:30 in the morning, we received warnings that no Israeli has ever seen in our history. It's not just a siren went off, but all of our cell phones started buzzing hysterically, saying, rush to your shelters, rush to your shelters. I turned to my wife and said, we just attacked Iran. There's all the reason for that. And we received those messages several times during the night, and now the message is it's over. There's a green light. You can go outside and get hummus. And I just looked outside. People are eating hummus. That is, to me, one of the most extraordinary indications of just how far-reaching and successful this military operation has been.
So, Ambassador, one last question for you. You said a minute ago that perhaps this will bring Iran to heel in some way and perhaps even lead to peace in Gaza. How would this attack or bringing Iran to heel, whatever that means or whatever that looks like, how does this help the path to peace in Gaza?
I think Hamas will internalize that it's completely alone now. It lost its Hezbollah ally last year. Now it's lost its major patron, which is Iran. And it's going to want to cut a deal as well. That deal, I think, would look like the release of all the hostages, a very long-term ceasefire, the demilitarization of the Gaza Strip, and the exile of Hamas's leaders to another not particularly hospitable country.
Former Israeli ambassador to the United States, Michael Oren. Ambassador, thanks for being here this morning. We appreciate it. Let's bring in